Hello and welcome to another episode of Jaxon Talks, everybody. Actually, this is not another episode. This is episode 100 of Jaxon Talks, everybody. Holy shit. We're 100 episodes in of Jaxon Talks, everybody. That's incredible. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me. I'm proud of this whole Jaxon Talks, everybody community. Specifically, big shout out to Ben, who edits every single episode of Jaxon Talks, everybody, of Champions Adjust, and of all the You Are Love videos. Ben, we're 100 episodes in. Holy cow. Thank you for being on this team, on this Jaxon Talks, everybody team with me. I couldn't be at 100 episodes without you. There's no way. So thank you. Thank you. I love you, and you're the best. So 100 episodes in to Jaxon Talks, everybody. Holy cow. Wow. Yeah, wow. Unbelievable. So I want to recap a little bit where Jaxon Talks, everybody started, how it started, why it started, where it is now, where we plan to go. I spoke a little bit about this with Reno when he came on the pod. That's one of my favorite episodes. Go check that episode out. But if you're here, if you've made it to episode 100 of Jaxon Talks, everybody, I'm sure you're very familiar with our catalog, with our guests, with who we've had on. But holy shit, we have made it to 100 episodes of Jaxon Talks, everybody. Amazing. Thank you for the community we have created here. Thank you for showing up every week. This is easily one of my favorite things that I do. One of the most important things that I do, and I just love it. So, if we look back to episode number 1 of Jaxon Talks, everybody, that was filmed on August 3rd, 2019, was episode 1. Let me backtrack a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, we're in 2019. I've officially moved back to Dallas. So for context, as you know, I was living in Philadelphia at the time that my sister passed away, which was September of 2018. I finished out the rest of the year. in Philadelphia. Okay. So then January of 2019, I moved back to Dallas. In January of 2019 to be closer to my family. Because of what we were going through, we needed to be closer together. And then I was still wrestling actively. Then I was kind of at the point where I was getting away from being Lights Camera Jaxon. I spent those 6 months in Philadelphia really contemplating my life. I went through an injury as well, so I lost my sister in September. I ended up breaking. Then I spent the whole month of September here in Dallas. And then I went back at the end of September to Philadelphia to debut for Beyond Wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, you know that's a big deal. So I flew back to Philadelphia to wrestle Wheeler Yuta, who's now an AEW superstar, been on the podcast twice, in Massachusetts. And then I spent October through the end of the year in Philadelphia. In October, like the second, third day of October, I'm having a professional wrestling match, and I shatter and break my cheekbone. So I'm out for 10 weeks. No wrestling. So no wrestling, a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, a lot of reconstructing of my life. That's where I discovered You Are Loved. That's where the first run of t-shirts happened. That's when I started doing a deep dive into my own mental health, into psychology, into philosophy, into personal development, trying to figure out what to do, how to move through this thing that I was feeling, how to help people, how to help myself, how to help my family, how to just rediscover what was important in my life. And without wrestling, I was able to kind of sort that out. And then I got back from the injury 10 weeks later, and I was slowly moving away from this lights, camera, Jackson, moving away from being pretend, from being a character, more to being real on the internet and in person. And then I moved back to Dallas in January of 2019. I move in with my parents. And I'm really actively kind of figuring out how to create more content. What do I want to do with wrestling? What character do I want to present? I don't want to present a character. I want everything to be the same. I want Aaron Mashpitz and Jaxon Stone to kind of be one interchangeable piece. You know, I'm larger than life when I perform professional wrestling, but the things I post are real. The things I talk about are real. Here's some personal information about me. And then that came up, this idea to create Jaxon Talks, everybody. Originally, it was supposed to be content for the MPX network specifically. I decided to take that idea and just make my own content from it. I was already posting YouTube videos and quite a bit of content related to Jaxon Stone. And so the idea was basically to have this talk show where I would bring people on and I would ask them questions about myself. And I did that for a little bit. There were some few good guests, but the questions kind of got a little boring early in the pod. And so the questions then would change into just a real casual, normal dialogue between two people. And mostly I had my friends on. And it just turned into serious conversations because that was the stuff I was really diving deep into at the time, trying to figure out my own self, trying to figure out my own resentment and grief and bitterness towards different subjects inside and outside wrestling and baseball, and going through the stuff with my sister and figuring out mental health and trying to discover what You Are Loved meant to me and where I wanted to take it. These conversations slowly just moved past that. They moved past this like cheesy wrestling talk show that I was trying to do. You can go on YouTube and you can see the talk show preview trailer that I made for this podcast. It's a great piece of work. My mom filmed the whole thing and then Ben edited it all together, and we did a really good job. But it's moved totally, it just started to organically move away from that. And then the speaking out movement happened in professional wrestling. And so I decided actively to delete a bunch of episodes because I wasn't comfortable with having that information out there with those people. I thought it was inappropriate. And so I removed some of those episodes. So that backtracked me a lot. And then at the time, I was also doing every other week. So I was doing every other week because I didn't know how many guests I could get on. I didn't know how much I wanted to do it, how much I was going to dive deep into it. And so with all that being said, all that happened. Episode 1 officially was filmed August 3rd, 2019. It's with my best friends. We were in Oklahoma celebrating our buddy who was going to become a Marine, is now currently a Marine. His name is Sam. You've seen him on this podcast a bunch of times. He's an incredible, incredible person. So I'm really glad that's episode number 1 with the reshuffling that we did. That's officially episode number 1 with my amazing best friends in the whole wide world. My best friend Al is getting married in August, and I'm super pumped to be his best man. Shout out to Al. I love you. I love you. I love you. And then all that stuff happened. And then the pod kind of, in my eyes, Jaxon Talks, everybody really, really caught steam when I dropped episode number 6. When I dropped episode number 6. If you're unfamiliar with the speaking out movement, that happened in professional wrestling, and I felt it was my duty to be honest and open about the situation that I was currently going through. And so I decided to film that episode, number 6. It's called Restart. And Restart Jaxon Talks, everybody. Make this podcast the platform that I want it to be. Have the conversations that I want. Speak about the tough, difficult, interesting, and beautiful subjects that I want to talk about. So I posted that episode on June 25th, 2020. On June 25th, 2020. That's when I started posting every single Tuesday, which I still do, except I take 4 weeks off in December, every single Tuesday. So episode 6, the Restart, was filmed and posted on June, not, it was just filmed, sorry, it was filmed on June 25th, 2020. Now I'm filming episode 100. So 94 episodes later, I'm filming episode 100 on June 2nd, 2022. And this episode 100 will be posted on the day before my birthday on June 14th, 2022. So episode 100 of Jaxon Talks to Everybody drops on June 14th, 2022. The next day is June 15th. That's when I turn 30. And so that's some really monumental stuff there. So I consider myself to be basically 2 years into this podcast, 2 years of constantly posting every single Tuesday except for December, with guests, with solo episodes, with hotlines, with new information, with all of these things that I'm learning and failing at and discussing and trying to learn about, all being discussed on this podcast for the last 2 years. We're finally at episode 100. I have no idea what's going to happen at episode 150, where we're going to be at episode 200, 300, 400, 500, 1,000 episodes of Jaxon Talks, everybody. But I can tell you with almost 100% certainty that this podcast will be something that I do for the rest of my days or until I cannot do it anymore. I love this podcast. It has taught me a lot about myself, about listening, about communication skills, about people, about life, about what to just about everything. And I love this podcast. I'm so happy to be on episode 100 telling you that now. I can't wait to be at 200, 300, 400, 500. I will continue to drop a new episode, whether it be with a guest, whether it be a solo, every single Tuesday until I cannot do it anymore. And again, I have a podcast that drops almost every single Thursday called Champions Adjust. It's a baseball specific podcast, but we're really mostly just diving into youth sports, specifically youth baseball. So that's really important. So you can hear from me every Tuesday and every Thursday, and clips are getting posted all the time. There's a YouTube channel where everything gets posted, whether it's You Are Loved, Jaxon Talks Everybody, Champions Adjust, and then there's a clip, a YouTube channel where I just post clips of the pod, and you can get a little taste, and then you can go and get every episode for free on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or on JaxonTalksEverybody.com. This podcast will remain ad-free. The best way to support the podcast, though, is to go to patreon.com/Jaxon Stone and support us. $1 a month, $3 a month. If you support us with $5 or more a month, based on your tiers, if you select a $5 tier, that means you get a exclusive edition of Jaxon Talks Everybody every single month on the first Monday of every single month. So you get these 4 episodes, 4 or 5, 3 or 4 or 5, depending on the month, of Jaxon Talks Everybody every Tuesday. And then if you subscribe and sign up to the Patreon tier of $5 or more, you get a premium exclusive edition of Jaxon Talks Everybody. But if you pledge $1 or $3, you're still directly supporting this pod so we can remain ad-free. And I might do more stuff on Patreon. I'm trying to do a lot on Patreon. I know it's behind a pay window, but $1, $3, $5, $10. If you can support that, we can expand some of the stuff we're going to be able to do on this podcast. More live Q&As, group hangouts, Zoom sessions, more exclusive episodes, all of that stuff. That's the best way because that money is directly supporting me. It's also directly supporting this podcast and You Are Loved. And Jaxon Talks Everybody and You Are Loved are kind of the 2 most important ventures I have. And so that's why I've set up this Patreon for direct-to-consumer support and direct-to-consumer interactions, because I care about you and I want to hear from you and I want to talk to you. And so that's important to me. Yeah. And then you get an email directly into your inbox every Tuesday and Friday if you sign up for our newsletter at jaxonstone.net. And then there's the best books I've ever read and my most favorite influential books on JaxonTalksEverybody.com. That list is free. You can check that out. And then support our other podcast, Champions Adjust. You can go to champsadjust.com. You want all your merchandising needs happen at jaxonstone.net, shopforeverybody.com, or youarelovedlife.com. A lot of stuff going on here at Jaxon Stone Inc. But I'm excited to be doing what I'm doing. This podcast is a huge vehicle for me to learn out loud, to live, to fail publicly, to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep growing, and hopefully sharing what resonates with me to resonate with you so we can actively grow and change the world together. Episode 100, Jaxon Talks, everybody. Amazing. But I want to share with you I told you that episode number 6 was probably the most important podcast. Not most important, but top 3. One of the most important episodes that we've done, right? It was kind of the kickoff of this version of Jaxon Talks, everybody. The open, honest, vulnerable, deep insight, heavily discussed, a lot of conversations about Jaxon Talks, everybody. This episode 6 kicked off what I actually want this podcast to be about, and I'm proud of that episode. And it was filmed almost 2 years ago. And then another very important episode, if you're brand new to the pod, you've only listened to like the last few episodes with Reno and Eli, and maybe you're brand new just to this episode because you saw episode 100 and you're like, holy shit, that's pretty cool, I want to check it out. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. The best episodes that you can check out to kind of get a nutshell of what's happening here would be to go to episode number 65. That's where I heavily discuss my sister, also mental health awareness month, which is in May. This one was recorded in 2021, and that's a really cool episode just to hear more about my sister. You can also go to the mental health awareness one I posted this year in 2022. I discussed my sister a little bit and also touch on why mental health is important, why May is a very important month, and stuff like that. So episode 65 is another important episode. And then I think my most watched, viewed, download, listened to episode ever is episode number 81. It's titled Sex, Relationships, and Porn. And so I talk about my celibacy journey, my mindset on porn and masturbation and things of that nature, where I've grown to view it and what I think our young men and young boys should be doing to live their best life possible and treat their sexual partners, whoever they may be, to the best of their ability, treat them the best they can through kind of these methods that I've discovered through a lot of trial and error, a lot of fail. But I heavily discuss my celibacy journey, what that means to me, how it changed my life, what it brought into my life on episode 81. So episode 65 and episode 81 are really, really important episodes. If you're new, you can start there. But if you do go to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Jaxon Stone, everybody, the first playlist is where you should start. There's my sister, there's an episode with Willow Nightingale, there's all of these things. There's a beautiful place to start. You can scroll through all of those. Then there's all 100 episodes of Jaxon Talks, everybody, full length. There's full length Champions Adjust. There's all of the You Are Love videos, the You Are Love mental health series, the webinars we've done. All of that stuff is all on the YouTube channel. So subscribe, share it with a friend. It's a really great channel. And the more you subscribe to it, the more you share with your friend, more it pops into people's feeds, and the more people we can have listen to this podcast. And then if you haven't already, give us a review on Spotify and Apple, and then tell your friends and family to do it. And so that's what's important right there, is that we're on episode 100 of Jaxon Talks, everybody, and I can't wait to do 100 more. Where are we going to be a year from now, 2 years from now? What kind of guests can we have on? What kind of conversations? What kind of things can we change and alter? And where our perceptions lie and our biases and all these things we can navigate and unfold and unpack. It's so cool. It's so beautiful. And I just want to shout out a couple podcasters and podcasts that I really admire, that I really look up to. Tim Ferriss is one, and the Tim Ferriss podcast, Tim Ferriss Show, huge. I love him. I love the Rich Roll podcast. Big fan of Rich, what he does, what he stands for. And then Modern Wisdom is another one hosted by Chris Williamson. Those three are kind of my three go-tos as where I'd like to get to with this podcast. Millions of downloads, 300 plus thousand subscribers on YouTube, things like that, where people are downloading. They're dropping 2 or 3 episodes per week. I'm gonna stick with 1 episode per week because I have another podcast that drops on Thursday, so you can hear from me 2 times a week. But that's what I'm trying to get to, right? Really high quality camera work, audio work, trying to get multiple cameras set up so you can see different views of the people here who come over and do the podcast, trying to have better clips, things of that nature. There's a second YouTube channel just for clips, so go check that out. But yeah, Tim Ferriss, Rich Roll, and Chris Williamson are really some podcasters that I look up to. The way they carry themselves, the way they ask questions, the way they listen, the way they communicate, the way they feed off the energy of their guest and really listen and hear them and then ask questions appropriately after that. And it's something that I'm trying to work on. It's something that this podcast has given me the ability to work on, which is my listening skills, my communication skills, really hearing someone, seeking first to understand, and then responding later. Really seeking to understand is a key component here on Jaxon Talks, everybody. And really listening, trying my best to not cut people off, let them finish their trains of thought, even if there's pauses in there, and allow myself to pause and digest and regroup and talk about the things that I believe to be true, that are important. And so that's a big lesson that I've learned from those guys, from doing 100 episodes of Jaxon Talks, everybody, is that listening is important, seeking first to understand, being able to communicate competently and articulate. I'm talking about trying to articulate competently as a lesson that I've learned. So let me backtrack a little bit, right? So here's just a few lessons that I've learned from doing 100 episodes of Jaxon Talks, everybody. Really listening to someone is a beautiful unlock to a real, genuine connection with someone. You want to seek first to understand. That's very important. And being able to communicate what you feel, being able to communicate competently, being able to communicate respectively, hearing other people's opinions and views and allowing their perspective to and notice that perspective. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And this podcast allows me to really sit down with a person or sit down with myself and dive deep into something, into a person, into a subject, into a idea, an ideology, a philosophy, and think about it and think out loud and have this dialogical thinking, maybe with another person or just through the camera, about what I believe to be true and what I stand for. And that's really important because your words matter, your actions matter, and we want to line up our words and our actions through our core values, and we want to flourish through those core values. And doing this podcast, 100 episodes of this podcast, has taught me that. And so let me know what you've learned potentially from this podcast, or what you'd like to learn more of, and maybe what guests you have in mind. All of that stuff is welcome. You can DM me, you can comment on JaxonTalksEverybody.com, you can throw me an email, whatever. I appreciate your feedback because I appreciate you coming back and listening to 100 episodes of Jaxon Talks, everybody. That's amazing. So thank you. I want to leave you with one thing. Well, not one. Well, it's just a paragraph that I think holds some weight, and I think it's an important thing to think about as I leave you with this. How we spend our days becomes our life. Your priorities are not revealed in your words, they are revealed in your actions, and your actions are revealed by your schedule. You can say something or someone is important to you, but if it isn't penciled in, you're lying to yourself. Tomorrow is not a promise, not even kind of. If fear is holding you back from what you want or need to be doing in your life, just realize that fear isn't going anywhere. And everyone who has done something amazing has done it despite the fear, not in its absence. Until science can otherwise, we are all ending our story with death. It's really up to you on how you use the days leading up to your eventual demise. The thought of death scares some and makes others feel liberated. I like to remember, as long as there's breath in my lungs, I can create any life I wish to create. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile is. And once the breath is gone, it doesn't matter anyways. Life is too short to be in any situation you don't want to be in, and it feels even shorter when you're with the people you don't want to be around. There aren't any erasers to undo our past, but there are fresh pages to write a new chapter. I have great friends who mustered up the courage and strength to escape their comfort zones and place themselves in situations they would much rather be in. It took time and it was a struggle, but they came out as better people with better lives. You can do the same thing. It won't be easy, but so what? Is there really a point to building a life that isn't the life that you want? I strongly encourage you to take risks. You're worth it. The fear isn't going away, so respect that relationship and work with it, around it, and despite it. Let your actions do the talking from now on, and if something is important to you, let it show in your day-to-day movements. Thank you for joining me, being with me, supporting me, loving me, encouraging me through 100 episodes of Jaxon Talks, everybody. I wouldn't be here without any of you who support this podcast. This community means everything to me. Thank you so much. I will see you next week, next Tuesday, for episode 101 of Jaxon Talks, everybody. Until then, lots of love. Please take good care of yourselves and others. Goodbye for now.